Hey guys, welcome back to Memo Makes. We got part 2 of the Polaris build, the MTX audio system going into it. We got some wiring, some assembly in this part 2 video. Stick with us. It's important to watch this part because the wiring is very important. You will see some of the differences in the way that I do things. I take a few extra steps to make the wiring a little bit better versus just a basic install. The way that a lot of shops will do it, even some of the MTX videos would just do just the basic wiring. Really, they'll just plug things in, connect things to where they work. You'll see me take a few extra steps, and I'll mention them on the video so you can see it. You can judge it for yourself. I hope you liked the video. Come back to us, watch part 3, like, subscribe, share it with a friend, and we'll see you at the end.
Bringing it into position. Work on this further out. Get all the So watching wiring is one of those things that realistically nobody wants to do, but I'll record myself doing the wiring, and if you don't like, you can skip ahead. I'll see if I can put a timestamp to when I'm actually doing something else. For now we're just going to try to we're going to try to wire this stuff up in a clean fashion. Alright, that's a butt connector we're never going to recover. Alright, so that gray wire, which is the positive for the speaker, and the black one is the negative. So we've got it there. Once we tighten that up, protect that with some loom tubing, heat shrink these, which you've already seen me do. We're going to terminate these two, which we're not going to use. So I'm going to put a terminal just like this one with no connection at the end of it, and why don't I just show you. Actually, what we'll do is we'll put some heat shrink tubing just to cap those off. Now you see how I cut them off, offset from one another? So what we'll do is we'll just slide this tubing in here, and since there is no connection, what we'll do is we'll leave them out a little bit. We'll heat this up, pinch this, and that will seal it. Again, boys and girls, don't do what I do. This heat shrink can get hot, and hot things are dangerous. There we go, watertight. And you've seen me do these, so I'll skip on that. Alright, so this is the socket which we're going to remove. This is the socket where you would normally plug in your cigarette lighter adapter type charger. So we're going to remove this and we're going to replace it with a USB and auxiliary connector there. This here is the piece that's going to replace it.
Seatbelt harnesses.
It's going to have a shroud just like that. It's in my hand. It goes on the back.
So what I do is I stick a flat screwdriver
just like that, just like this would be.
Sharp,
but instead you'll have this. You pop it up. You can still charge your phone through that USB connector, but you can also feed music into the system through the USB or the auxiliary. So it appears this is just a pop-in piece there.
You can release the tension. And the second loop goes by a lot faster. You see me work to the second loop. Once you get that loop off, then the buckle can move around a little bit. You slide the screwdriver in a lot easier that time. You do want to be really careful, of course, of not damaging people's harnesses. Because again, if it's going in with some tension, you're doing it wrong. You shouldn't be doing it that way.
I'm gonna try to take out the seat here. You see me reach under there, release the tab that's under there, move the seat up. Then I remember that I hadn't undone the lower part of the seatbelt harness. So you'll see me, I'll fast forward here, just undoing those straps from there. No big deal, you just gotta slide those out. They were a lot easier than those back ones.
Just like the vice grips are always vice grips, these are channel locks. Just like a crescent wrench is always a crescent wrench, these are channel locks for me. So we got that out and we're going to replace it. We are going to have to bore this hole out a bit. I'll do that on camera so you can see it with the step bit. Then we're going to put the other piece in there. Okay, so I spoke too soon. This piece does fit right in there. We're going to put the shroud on it. So it goes in like so. Drive this in through here and put the nut on there. It's a matter of tightening up that nut in the back. So you want to more or less have it centered, not centered, but to where it looks vertical. And then we're going to tighten up that bit with the channel locks. So alright, so I don't like the way the rubber deal lines up. You see how the top, that little lip catches on it? You kind of struggle. This little ear is supposed to be accessible, so we're going to loosen it up so we can turn that piece. And I'm going to double check if you can see me. Yes, you can see me. Alright, so we'll turn the cap part a little bit so that the ear is off to the side whilst still keeping the relationship between the relation between the two connectors vertical. So there it is. So these are vertical, USB, auxiliary. Cap this up. To open it, you just pull on the ear, and what do you know? You got a watertight, not waterproof, watertight connection there. Looks just as good as the original, but a lot more useful. Alright guys, what we've got here is another chance to differentiate ourselves from others by putting in a little bit more work. Now this is a knob that controls the level of bass that comes out of the system, the boom basically. If you're into car stereos, you may be familiar with what this is. It's a little piece that you're supposed to screw up under the dash, and then you turn the bass, just the bass volume on this knob. And I think they're kind of unsightly. I don't particularly like the way most of these look. It's a metal box. Newer cars these days, they don't have this kind of thing, and it's not integrated into the vehicle. So what we do here, and I've already loosened this up, you could just take this cap off, take off this nut. Again, I've already loosened this up. It wasn't like that. A lot of these knobs can easily come apart. Now this is all there is to it. It just connects to a connector that comes from the amplifier, and this is it. It's pretty simple. So you drill a hole somewhere, you check for clearance behind it, that there's not going to be anything behind it, and that you get a good placement for the driver to easily control that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go right here, right next to this key, and this is more or less, this is the center of the dashboard there. So we're going to go right here. We can't go center because we've got a mounting point for it right here in the center. So we're going to off center a little bit, and there's nothing back here in this area right here behind it. So we can go right here, and we're going to drill us a hole right there and put this knob behind it. Alright guys, so we got the M12 drill with the step bit. Since this is plastic, we're not going to have a hard time drilling through it, so we don't need a big drill. This is more or less what it'll look like. You know, here it would be in the center. That would be perfect, but we cannot do it. So you don't want to just go off a little bit. We're going to go like between this and this step here, right about there. And we also are going to center the height between this rim and this level here. So right about there is where we're going to go. Right here. Again, very soft metal, very soft plastic. You want to be very careful. Push in very slow. If you push at all, you should just let the drill do the work. Looks like the first step is good enough. What we're going to do is going to clean it up from the back. That should be enough. Maybe not. And there we go, we're in. So tighten up the nut from the other side. Again, it's plastic, you know, you don't need to kill it, you especially don't want to break that little control. So it's that simple. Now, if these have a little notch on it like this does, if you want to do, you want to just start it there and then look to see more or less that it does the circle that it's supposed to. You know, if you got to adjust it a little bit, you do that, and just push it in, drive it in. You want to hold it from the back as you're pushing it in. You don't want to force this plastic. So what I was doing is holding this piece back here. I'm holding the piece back here whilst pushing in here on it. So you can see that it's a decent look there. Let me see if I can see what you see. Yeah, so there it is there. So what you got is the control for it right there on the dashboard. You don't have to reach way up under it, because here would be that radio system and you'd reach way under here to control it, and that kind of looks stealth. Alright guys, this is the amplifier that's going to power up those rear pod speakers that are going to go way in the back there. We're going to go ahead and mount it. We're going to go ahead and mount it to the subwoofer enclosure right here. I already checked for clearance on the dash piece that goes right here. It's that piece that holds the gauge cluster. So we are going to line this up to the front of the box. Try these screws in here. This here's plastic, so so we're going to connect some of these connections here. This loom that comes with it that powers the unit, we're going to guide down. We're also going to guide down the RCA connections. The antenna we're not going to use, so we're going to tie it up here. We are going to use the USB and the auxiliary. We're going to take those and put them onto a dash mounted unit. It's going to make it kind of cool. You'll still be able to charge your phone through that USB, but you'll also be able to feed that music into the system and the auxiliary as well. So those are going to go on the dash piece, and we'll show you that later. So what I'm going to do right now is connect these RCAs here. I'm going to make sure that they are a watertight connection. And I'm going to guide these up down this way. Alright guys, so we're going to be installing these heat shrink tubing sleeves into this RCA here. Trying to one hand this. So these will go in here, and what this will allow us to do is make this a watertight connection. So you see it there. We'll bring in the RCA. Hooks up like so. I want to hook up in there. So these will go on here. Slide these down a little bit, and we will heat shrink them. And this is not only heat shrink, it's heat shrink with adhesive on it, so it'll glue itself to the pieces and make like a silicone connection there. We may do the same to the USB connector and this auxiliary connector. What that'll do, I mean, this water should not reach up here, but for these off-road specific vehicles, you kind of want to do it if you can. If it's within the budget, try and do something like that. Again, it's a more professional finish. We may also put one on this antenna socket just so it doesn't corrode in there, and then just pinch it at the end and it glues it to itself so that it's sealed in there and no moisture can get in there. So we're going to guide the wires that we have already set down through that hole that's up on the dash. These are going to be a tight fit. We're going to guide the USB and auxiliary cables now. We had to bring in the dashboard obviously because they are already installed into it. So obviously we've got to bring in the dash. come through all that stuff. So here we go. First I'll bring in the USB, which is the larger one, and I'll move it out of the way. Bring in the auxiliary jack, sometimes called a 3.5mm jack. Okay, so now that we've got these two bundles of wire, these we led down, these we led up, I'm going to make the connections up here just like we did on those other ones. I still haven't heat shrunk any of these. We're going to do it all at once. We're going to connect the USB, we're going to connect the auxiliary, and we'll do that and heat shrink all the pieces. Alright, so I found the sleeves that I wanted, the right size for these. So we'll slide them in. Connect the cable that we want. So the connections are made. Oh, well, we do need one more connection. I hadn't thought of. So the RCAs, the USB, and all that stuff. We also need a remote turn-on wire. This little wire here is blue wire, usually coming out of stereos, blue or blue-white. It turns on all the other accessories, like the amplifiers. They call it a remote wire. So we're going to have to connect one for here and then bring that down. So we're going to extend this remote wire so that it turns on the amplifiers on the subwoofer box, which is amplified within itself, and the amplifier that we put on the dash, under the dashboard on top of that box to power up the rear speakers. So we're going to use these connectors here. These connectors, they're called butt connectors, but they are a little bit different from most of the butt connectors that most installers use. I don't use them all the time. I use them where moisture will be a problem, as in external applications like this. This is external, you know, because they pressure wash these things because there's no delicate things. These get muddy, they get sandy, so they just wash them out, you know. So everything that we do here is going to be water resistant. Not waterproof, but watertight. So these connectors, just like that heat shrink, once we crimp them, so the connection is made, then we're going to shrink up this plastic around it, and there's some adhesive in there that also seals up the connection. We'll talk about these actual vice grip products, strippers, crimpers, in another video. I usually use my trusty old clean crimpers, but since I damaged my old strippers, I'm trying these out, and we'll do a review on them later. I've only recently started using them, but you can see the crimp works, and so now we're going to heat all these connections up so that we can seal the connections that we already made. Alright, so when you're heating these up, you do want to be mindful that what's in the background of the heat gun is not going to be damaged. So these butt connectors, they don't take a whole lot of heat, so once the heat gun actually heats up, I'm going to set it to the lower setting. So long as you are still shrinking that material, you are good. You don't need the high heat, because what you can do is you can melt down the actual wire. So I'm going to give you a close-up of what this looks like. Alright, and you're on the tripod, so. Alright, so that's the butt connector shrunk there. So you see a little bit of the adhesive oozes out of each edge, so you know it's a good seal. Now we're going to heat these up and make sure they seal. Just the same procedure. I'll set you guys down again. So I got you in a little bit closer. What you really want to look at is these wires anyway, not my ugly mug. So, you know, we'll get you a shot of that. Alright guys, so here's a look at it. Those are the connections there. You see how now they are shielded, not just protected, but from impacts or being pulled from each other, but there's adhesive in there that seals up moisture from coming in actually. And this pink one is obviously a butt connector. It is also waterproof. So these are connections that are not going to corrode. These are connections that are not going to give you problems down the road. Now this bundle, the connections, we're going to tuck them up here to where they can't be seen, and then we're going to zip tie the wiring down this pillar, and it's already guided through there, and I'll bring you back for that. So I got a little bit ahead of you guys. I forgot to start recording. I put all the cables into this wire loom. What that's going to do is it's going to allow us to keep a cleaner look, and we're going to put just a couple of zip ties down the pillar, one at the top where you can see it a little bit less, one right here by this mirror mounting bracket to where it camouflages it, and then one way down here to keep the cables from dangling, I guess. So let me set you up. So with split tuning, most of you know how it works. It just has a slit down the entire body of it, and then you just kind of wiggle the wires until they get in there, and we got to go. Take all the excess out of there. I cut the tubing to length before I started putting this on, so it should be a good fit down at the end there. Try a different angle for you. So these are the larger zip ties. Excess off the zip ties. Done up here, I think. No, I still need to tighten up the bolts that come from the top, and then we're going to go ahead and be done with that. The reason I'm going to tighten those is if I leave it towards the end like everything else that's assembly, I will forget to tighten those. Alright y'all, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to loosen up some of these bolts here. I'm not sure if these have to come off. This one, these, this one, this fastener there, so that we can bring the wiring up, not up, down this side here, inside this plastic panel, along this runner here, down to the back, up to the pods. And I'll bring you guys back when I do that. So the T30 again. All those need to come out, but you may as well take them out. Now this ribbon here is already mashed up, so somebody's been here before. This vehicle's had a couple of things done to it already. Some mods here and there. And they aren't as careful as I am. Speaking of careful, so now we can move this plastic a bit to where we can get that wiring in there. Guys, so I untangled a bunch of this, and now we're going to guide it down the side of the vehicle here, and then down the sill plate, I think it's called. But I'm going to get you another angle from over there. Alright guys, so we might get to block you a little bit, and we might get we guided those cables down in between these plastic pieces out through here. See the little bit of blue right there, and the zip tie that so you can't see it. Not that anybody would look in there, no reason why you would look, but all that's going to be zip tied down. Now they come out down here, which is the fender. So they come out right there from the body, so they're going to be zip tied on that pillar just like inside. They're going to come up, and this is where they're going to meet the speaker pod connections. And again, we're going to watertight connect those. We're going to join some of the wiring that goes up here pretty soon. The amplifier that's up here, that needs power, ground, remote, which is the blue wire. It needs the RCA connections, which is these. These are what give it signal. And then these have to be hooked up to those speakers, or in this case, this blue wire that we brought from the back that we're going to just guide down this way towards the amplifier. Going to make the connections there. And then the subwoofer amplifier has power, ground, RCA, just like the other one. Has the remote, that blue wire. This is the connection for that little remote that we put into the dashboard. And fairly simple, the wiring. I mean, if you don't let it stress you out. In this job, it's not that much wiring, so no big deal. Just keep it clean, follow the instructions, and that's it. I'm a professional. I've been at this a long time, so I'm comfortable doing this kind of job. This isn't for everybody, so if it's not in your wheelhouse, check out your local professionals. You know, maybe have them do it. Maybe you could try it out. Watch some more YouTube. Maybe you could do it yourself. If you're scared of it, you know, don't trust your wiring capabilities, stay away from it. We're going to feed the wires through this boot or grommet. It goes in this hole here, feeds through the firewall. I pulled it out of its place. Once I feed the wires through it, ground, power, and key. A key wire has to come back. That's this red wire here. It's going to come from the stereo through there as well. So I'll feed that through that rubber grommet. It's just got to be pushed in here. And then once all the wires are fed through it, you can put it back in its place. Make sure it's watertight.
We only need about 2 feet beyond the firewall. This is where we're going to connect both amplifiers and that top unit. Power and ground. And we're going to come out here and get power and ground from this main bus bar, which is where all these connections are. And so there we go, power ground. And this wire here is key accessory. Key accessory wire, I call it.
See if we can feed it back through the grommet. Probably too tight in there. Just go in. But maybe, just maybe. No, I'm not that lucky. So what we do is we're going to pull this red out a little bit. We're going to tape this to it. We're going to pull the bigger red one back through. And that will feed the wire back. Just a couple turns is enough. Pull this through. There we go. So it's through. Now we take the tape off. Make sure the length of red is where we needed it again, and it is, right even with the black. On the dashboard side, we want to have some slack. We're going to zip tie this obviously, but we want to have some wiring so we can service things. If ever we need to service something, that wiring will be available to us to move components and whatnot, so we don't struggle like we did when we were trying to install that woofer and couldn't. We would have been able to install it if the wiring that they did before had not been done in that manner. I'm not going to say it was right, I'm not going to say it was wrong, but I'll just say that we needed to service something and we couldn't because of the way it was wired. So, I mean, you can judge for yourself whether it was correct or incorrect. And we've got that boot back in its place. So that connection to the body is watertight again. Alright, so this is the bus bar where we're going to connect. We've got to hook up the power, so we hooked up our fuse holder. We put the protective heat shrink connector on here. We're going to put a terminal on here, connect the power, put a terminal on here, and connect to ground. We are also going to put a terminal here and connect the power with the key. Ay, papá. So we're going to take off a couple of these smaller ones, put that larger one lower there, a little bit lower, and turn these up. How did I put that down? I don't know.
Well, there it was, part 2. Like I said, a lot of wiring. I hope you got something out of it. Maybe there was some value in it for you. This is just what kind of has to go on behind the scenes. You know, as the end user, you don't see any of this, but if you have a professional do it, this is what takes place. A lot of time goes into wiring, and it is, I would say, maybe 75% of the job is in the wiring. The other things, well, either it's mounted or it's not, but how it's wired determines the longevity and the quality of the product result. You know, if you get great products, but they're installed in I guess a so-so manner, well, you get so-so results. You know, so you want something done right, you got to put in the time. So I hope you liked it. Come back, watch part 3. It's in the works. We should have it up right away. Like I said, like, subscribe, share with a friend, and we'll see you on part 3.